good afternoon, good night, wherever you may be, and welcome to a special edition of our Open Up Live broadcast, where we speak to people pretty much all over the world on important matters relating to men and boys. My name is Dipchand Ramcharitar. I'm the Outreach and Development Coordinator here at Voice of Men 360. What's Voice of Men 360? Well, it's a non-profit organization based in London, Ontario, Canada, and looking out for the needs of men and boys as best we can. That's our primary function. However, we also try to reach out to other demographics as much as possible. So before I continue, I would like to get to our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not represent necessarily Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we would recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns regarding today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360. Well, on with the program, and today our esteemed guest is Halima Layeni. She's a mental health advocate for men. She has a slew of accolades after her name, and we're very, very happy to have her with us. So I'll just run through sort of a basic synopsis of what she is about. She's the founder and executive director of Life After Abuse Foundation. She has dedicated herself to reshaping the global discourse on mental health, gender equality, and the eradication of gender-based violence, engaging with over 10,000 men and boys over a wide spectrum. Her accomplishments have international recognition. They include 2023 Honorary Award for Mental Health NGO of the Year, 2017 John Bray U.S. Council General Award, 2023 Donors for Africa African Women in Development Award, and 2023 Lagos State Government Honorary Recognition for Trailblazer Men's Mental Health Advocate. So, on to our esteemed guests. Take it away, Halima. Just introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll continue with the questions.
Thank you so much for inviting me to lend my voice to this significant podcast. As we know, it's International Men's Month, and even if we don't really have the buzz around, I just wanted us to know that these conversations are healing men. These conversations are healing families and communities, regardless of how enclosed that they might be. And I just wanted to say thank you to Voice of Men 360 for the amazing work that you're doing for men and boys.
You're more than welcome. We are indeed honored to have you with us. So let's get started. First of all, can you tell us what inspired you to become an advocate for men's and boys' mental health?
Thank you so much for that question. It's not an uncommon question. I get that all the time. In April 2017, I stood before young rural adolescent girls to raise awareness on life after abuse, the possibility of leading a fulfilling life in spite of abuse. And after the session, I had a boy hanging around the class walk up to me to say that, what about me? You only came here to speak to girls. What about me? I myself have been sexually abused. And why do we have so many people coming to only focus on girls? And I remember that day like it was yesterday. I went home, thinking about the question. I kept on thinking about the question. It just made me think that is sexual abuse among boys really prevalent, because that was like 2017. We're still getting women and girls to speak up about their trauma. And we decided to flip the script a bit, by channeling our next program towards a boys and men's program, right? And so we reached out to boys, and then we raised awareness on healthy masculinity, on trauma, on speaking up, and it was amazing how many boys actually came out to say that they had been sexually abused. And I think that that was just a game changer for me. I figured that we had lots of organizations already driving conversations on empowering women who had suffered abuse and trauma. And then I figured that in order for my work to be relevant, in order for my voice to be heard, then then my advocacy needed to be specific. It needed to be targeted towards boys and men. And I guess that's how we got here.
Excellent. I commend you for your fine work. We also here we at Voice of Men 360 support fully any advocacy or any issues regarding women and girls. However, we do notice that there is in Western culture, and I'm guessing where you are, it's the same thing. There is a sad lack of any awareness or any advocacy or anything of that sort relating to men and boys. And we're here doing our small little bit, and we appreciate the work that you're doing there in that regard as well. So thank you for your support. Another important thing we wanted to ask you is, why do you think it's important to showcase men's mental health more than ever now?
The list is inexhaustive. We all know the issues that men and boys are currently facing all over the world, not just in my climb here in Africa. It's all over the world. We all know that, according to the WHO, men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide. Men are more likely to suffer from depression. We're also aware that we have men are more likely to suffer from drug addiction as well. We're also aware that there's a lack of funding for men's shelter, especially for men who have suffered domestic violence, right? And I think that even if these stories do not make it to the news, it doesn't take away the fact that these things are happening to men and boys. The only reason why we don't see the headlines is because men have been socially conditioned um, to deal with their emotions, to be stoic, to be silent about their issues. There's this toxic social conditioning that just puts men in like a box, and that tells them that is weakness to talk about your struggles, or it's weakness to seek help, or to talk about your experiences of abuse, of trauma. And I think that there's so many issues affecting men and boys, and obviously the reason why the media is not driving conversations about it is because men have been bullied, if I may use that word, into silence. Men have been bullied. Every time a man comes out to say he has been sexually abused, or he's suffering from domestic violence, he's met with judgment and mockery. You hear people say things like, "Are you not a man? Are you not a man? How can you say you've been sexually abused? You were supposed to enjoy it." These are some of the toxic societal values that we have passed down to men and boys, that continues to affect them psychologically and emotionally.
Yeah, I hear you. And sadly, again, it's the same with our culture here in Western society. The statistics you mentioned earlier sort of we're consistent with what we see over here as well. So definitely, more than ever before, there is an absolute need to address these issues. Moving on, can you tell us what positive outcomes have emanated from the programs you've conducted regarding men and boys' mental health?
So I'll start with my personal experience and then I'll go further to an organizational experience. I would say that, it has been one of the greatest privilege of my life, advocating for men's mental health. I think that the 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 feeling of knowing that men feel heard, men feel like their experiences are acknowledged, is just one thing that keeps me going, that keeps me, advocating for men's mental health. However, organizationally, we have been privileged to make a a significant impact, locally, nationally, and internationally. I would say that one of our our success stories is executing and managing over 60 school projects, 9 community projects, and 3 solidarity peace rallies in 13 states in Nigeria and in 4 countries all over the world. And the second thing would be the direct reach of 10,000 boys and men. We've been able to, provide mental health support to over 10,000 boys and men. Coupled with that, we've also been able to proactively engage with policymakers, law enforcement officials, traditional rulers, effectively advocating for the pivotal role that men play in, ensuring that they get the help that they need. We've been privileged to engage the office of the governor. We've been privileged to engage um, the office of the Ministry of Health, the Commissioner of Health, the office of the Commissioner for Youth and Social Development. So we're constantly having these conversations. Currently, we're trying to get the attention of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to establish the inaugural Ministry of Men Affairs, because we believe that is important. We know that this is not something that is only lacking in Nigeria. We know that all over the world, even in America, that continues to lead other countries, we're still yet to have systems and structures in place that, governmental systems and structures in place that attend to boys and men's needs. So I would say that, those are a couple of establishments that we've been able to achieve over time.
That's very good work, absolutely. What type of reception do you generally get from men and boys? Do they readily come forward, or do they need a nudge and a push to come forward to you?
So I tell people all the time that we should all strive to be safe spaces, right? So if you create a safe space for anybody, they would open up to you about their trauma. And that includes men. The only reason why men are currently not admitting that they need help or not seeking help is because we continue to judge men. We continue to mock their pain. We continue to mock their trauma. When a man comes out to say, "Oh, I am being physically abused by my wife," he's met with mockery. The first thing we say to a man is, are you not a man? How can you say that you are being physically abused? Or if a man says he has been raped, we are always very quick to pass judgment. And I always tell people that if you are a safe space, anybody can open up to you. And I think that I just have that culture of creating a safe space for, my male friends and the males that I work with. Ask the difficult questions. Are you happy? Where are you at life? If you find that they're sad or they're depressed all the time, are you suicidal? Ask the difficult questions, ensure that, and then don't be judgmental. Create a non-judgmental space. When a man opens up to you about his trauma, it's not the time to start passing judgments or to start saying you did this wrong or you did that wrong. You need to understand that it took him a lot to actually open up to you about the issues that he's going through. So I think that um it has been an humbling experience. I don't think that most of my male friends actually say that I'm amazing. I'm great with men. Many people think I'm great with men. Like, men are able to, like, open up to me about certain things. But I say it all the time. Everybody can be that person. Everybody can be a safe space for men all over the world, even the men in our lives, starting from our husbands, our brothers, our cousins, our uncles. We can create that safe space. We can begin to have those difficult conversations with them. And it would it will surprise you as to how how easy it will be for them to actually open up to you.
Yeah, well, that approach that you've adopted, I would say, would be working wonders, and try and to get these guys out there and forward to get that help. So this is a bit of a controversial question. I say controversial because that's the way it's seen. It shouldn't be. So let's get to it. When men are the victims of gender based violence, how are they treated in relation to if the situation was reversed?
I think it's not a controversial question. I think that it's important for us to actually have the conversation, because from record, according to 1 in 6, 1 in 6 records that a study by 1 in 6 records that 1 in 6 men would be sexually abused before the age of 18. So these issues are prevalent among men. Men suffer from sexual abuse, as I've continued to add to to emphasize from the beginning of this conversation. Men, a UK study says that 40% of men actually suffer from domestic violence. So these issues are there. The only reason why is difficult is because men are constantly in a state where they are not allowed to speak up. They are not allowed to seek help for the issues that are bothering them. So I think that it's important for us to actually, have the conversation every time. I don't think that when a man comes out to say he has been sexually abused, I don't think that he gets as much support as he should get. When as opposed to when a woman comes out to say she has been raped. When a woman comes out to say she writes a post on her Facebook and says she was raped as a child. You see her getting messages from thousands of organizations all over the world, seeking support, seeking for them to support her and ensuring that she gets the help that she needs. But I don't think that is the same for men. Somebody would say that even if a man says on his Facebook that he's at the edge and about to jump, somebody says people would actually poke him to jump. People would not take him seriously. And I think that this has to do with the toxic notion that we hold of men. We think that men are robots, or they don't have feelings, or I mean that's what we have um I think that that's what they have been taught, to not be emotionally expressive, to not talk about their experiences, their trauma or their abuse. So when they come out to talk about these things, sometimes is seen as very strange. We have a couple of cases like that in Nigeria of certain celebrities saying that they were suffering domestic violence and people were actually insulting them. We had people saying that they were having couch custody issue and people were actually insulting the men. I recall a friend of mine in the US telling me one time that he reported domestic violence, and then when the police came in, they were asking his wife if his wife was okay. They were trying to check the wife. They were not even like, even if he was the one who made the call and to say that he was being abused by his wife. So I think that as a society we need to do better. When men We need to understand that gender-based violence is existent. We have men who suffer domestic violence, who suffer rape. Most people think that men cannot be raped. Many people actually have that, they have that mentality that it's impossible for a man to be raped. And most people also think that it is only women and girls that go through the long-term effects of sexual abuse or gender-based violence, because we think men are robots, because we think that men don't have feelings. And we need to understand that men actually have feelings. They're not robots. I've engaged with tens of men who have suffered sexual abuse, and they continue to tell me that the experience that they had as a child is impacting their current relationship, is impacting their marriages, is even impacting their productivity at work. So I think that we just need to start having more conversations. We need to change that mentality that gender-based violence doesn't affect men, and I believe that the more conversations that we drive about it, the more we're able to normalize conversation and help more men come out from their shell to talk about their experiences.
Absolutely. And one other thing, which I don't know if you can speak to this, but I would briefly mention it also, is in the judicial side of things. We see what we consider to be an unfavorable balance in terms of
Right.
judgment. when the shoe's on the other foot. So that's just something we've noticed as well. We're probably getting a little short on time, so I'm just going to move right along. Uh, the next question is, if you had the necessary tools, let's say like the sufficient manpower and finances, what additional ventures would you like to see materialize in the interest of not only men and boys, but society at large?
So I think that a world that is better for men is a world that is better for everybody. Everybody, gender equality benefits everybody, and so providing men access to the right help and support would in turn benefit families, communities, economies, and the nation at large, by extension, nations. And so, if I had the sufficient funding, I think that the very first thing I would do, for obvious reasons, I run a nonprofit. Our primary target audience are people from low income families, and so I know that men from low income families do not have access to the right mental health support, even if they are the ones who are more prone to having mental health issues for obvious reasons: financial insecurity, poverty, unemployment, and coupled with childhood experiences. So I think that the very first action I would take is to ensure that that demographic actually gains access to the right mental health support. The second thing I would do is to ensure that our veterans as well, and our military, again, this is also an aspect that we don't talk about enough. We don't talk about the post-traumatic effects that happens to our military, our militants, right? So i think that I think that post service, most of them really get the support that they need to overcome the trauma you know, of the violence that they have seen or experienced or perpetrated, for lack of a better word. So I
Yeah.
think that that's the second thing that funding will go into. And then finally, I think that I will establish a men's mental health institute that offers medical, psychosocial, and legal support to boys and men globally.
Yeah, those are excellent suggestions, and hopefully you can get some of them materialized. I'm glad you brought up the veterans issue. Just a few days ago, we had the Remembrance Day, and these are forgotten people. Most of them, who went to war, a good deal of them have laid down their lives so that we can walk the earth and our path free. And some of them who came back, what you would consider more fortunate, have to deal with PTSD and other issues. And it's time that we as a society do more towards getting them the help that they need. So it's that's a very important issue. Now, the other question that I have for you is, when it comes to legislative changes, because I'm sure there are changes we can all agree that needs to be uh, realized at a legislative level. Uh,
Right.
is your organization, what are they doing in that regard? Is there anything you're doing regarding looking forward to legislative changes?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that we're pushing for is, again, the establishment of a Ministry of Men Affairs, or in the lists, a men's agency. So currently in Nigeria, we have something called the Ministry of Women Affairs that has a department called the Department of Domestic Violence. Now, I was privileged to serve, there for a year. We handled over 96 cases of domestic violence cases. And here's the fun fact about that department. The department is actually open to both genders, right? So both male and females. But unfortunately, we don't get reports from males for obvious reasons. The ministry itself is called a Ministry of Women Affairs, and so there's already a bias attached to that name. And so when women come to report and then we invite their husbands will tell us that if I knew that this place existed, if I knew that this place was bias free, I think I would have been the first to come here. And so one of the things that we're pushing for in Nigeria, that my organization is pushing for right now on the national and state level, is the establishment of, that ministry, or in the least an agency, because we know that, it will probably cost a lot of money, to establish a ministry. We're not saying it's impossible, but we're saying that we need a dedicated social support center where men can feel safe. I always tell people that many men who took their lives, would have still been alive, would have probably still been alive today if they had a safe space. Like, if they had a center to visit, many of them wouldn't have gone to the bar to get drunk and probably, ran into a car and lost their lives, if they felt like there was an institution or a structure in place that could actually relate to their pain and their trauma, that could actually just listen to them, right? And so that's one of the things that we're pushing for. Also, we're also pushing for justice for men and boys who have been abused, who have been, we know that there's a lot of support for women and girls, but we are also pushing for perpetrators, female perpetrators, to also face the law. Female perpetrators who have abused men, who have raped men, who have sexually abused them or harassed them. We are also pushing that, men actually get the justice that they need when they have been sexually abused, or if when they have been falsely accused of rape. We see it not just in the climate here in Africa. We see it all over the world, where so many men have gone to prison, wasting away 10 years, 20 years of their lives, and then coming out after 20 years, and the women saying, oh, it wasn't him, oh, he did not rape me. And then we still see these women walking freely on the streets with no repercussion at all for their actions. So these are the things that we're actually pushing for. We're trying to push for a system that fights for men, that makes men feel heard and appreciated.
Yeah, those are critical issues. And again, fight a good fight. You're doing fantastic. So
Thank
keep doing
you.
what you're doing. We certainly appreciate it. And, we all the help we can get, we might as well take it, because as you and I both know, men's issues are way underneath the bottom ladder. So we have to do our best. And you certainly are doing yours. And again, thank you so much. So let's move to young men now. From your standpoint, from a proactive standpoint, what qualities do you suggest young men, that's young men under 18, adopt for their personal and professional well-being as they approach adulthood?
So I think that from childhood we try to tell boys not to cry, not to be empathic, not to be soft. Which these are the values that we have taught men. You introduce a curfew for a female child and then you just leave. I feel like for a very long time we have left boys to raise themselves. We have taught them that they shouldn't be like women, that they shouldn't feel certain emotions, they shouldn't express weakness, they shouldn't be compassionate, they shouldn't be soft, they shouldn't cry. These are toxic values that we have actually passed down to boys, and which is why we have millions of men currently who are currently struggling with intimacy, currently struggling with connecting with their children, who are currently struggling with even connecting with their partners, right? So I think that what we need to begin to teach boys is that it's okay to cry. I mean, crying is it has even been medically proven that crying is healthy for the body. Is healthy for processing your trauma. You know how you are burdened, and then you are able to cry even if the problem is not solved. You actually feel light just because you cried. I mean, I've spoken to men that would tell me that they haven't cried in like 3 4 years, they haven't cried in 5 years. How that is not even healthy for anybody. So I think that there needs to be a paradigm shift
Right.
in the values that we're passing to boys and men. We need to begin to teach boys that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be compassionate, it's okay to be respectful, it's okay to be empathic, it's okay to respect women. It doesn't make you weak. It's okay to engage in domestic chores, in childcare. It doesn't make you any less of a man to be kind to women, to be kind to people. So I think that these are the values that I think that we can actually, begin to pass down to boys, or get the ones who are now adults to unlearn those toxic values and begin to learn the new ones.
Absolutely. Well, we're running out of time. I have one last question for you, but before I do, I just want to give out some information about our organization. So we welcome any demographics to our organization, and I will just run through some information about who we are in terms of contact. So our phone number is 226-289-8784. Email address info@voiceofmen360.org. Website www.voiceofmen360.org. And you can find us on pretty much all social media. We have a Facebook group page. Please join our group so you can see our daily activities, and please invite your friends as well. Other social media platforms we're on: Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. So, Halima, can you tell us now a bit about your organization, including some contact information that you would like people to have in case they need to contact you?
Yeah. So I run the Life After Abuse Foundation, and we pretty much provide free mental health support to boys and men globally. We do this via media advocacy, like I am doing right now. We do this via community engagements, via education establishments and policy engagements as well. We believe that policy engagement is like the most powerful tool for effecting change. And you can find Life After Abuse Foundation across all social media at Life After Abuse Foundation. Our website is www.laugh.laughng.org. That's laugh LAAFNG.org, and you find all the information and helpful resources as well on the and advocacy on men's initiatives.
Well, we want to thank you so much for this absolutely wonderful and enthralling session. And you're welcome to come back anytime and visit with us. So thanks so much, Halima. Ladies and gentlemen, for all of you out there, you have been listening to an in-depth look with Halima Layeni, men's mental health advocate, founder and executive director of Life After Abuse Foundation. Please support her as much as you can, and we ask you to do the same for us. So, from all of us here at Voice of Men 360, we want to thank you all out there for tuning in to this absolutely special, insightful, and knowledgeable session. Thanks again, and have a good evening, good night, good day, wherever you may be. Goodbye.